Hi everyone! 5 important things to ask your employer before you accept a job in Australia. Now, this is going to be for those students like myself who will be mostly doing non-skilled and then manual jobs to pay for your expenses while studying in Australia. Okay, so these are something that I have experienced and learned, unfortunately, and I wanted to share so that you would be wary of it and then not experience. So yeah, here are the 5 things that I really wish I had asked my employer before I took my first job here in Australia, and I want you guys to ask before you take your first job. Okay, so number on my list is to ask and be clear with your employer whether you're going to be a casual employee, a part-time employee, or a full-time employee, because your benefits and then the wage you are paid per hour is going to depend on the type of employment that you are in. Okay, if you are a full-time employee, then obviously they will have to give you full-time hours, which is like what if you work 8 hours per day, then 8 5 so 40, around 38 to 40 hours you have to be given. But in most cases, what happens is when employers try to recruit you, they say that it's gonna be a full-time job, then in the middle, like, trust me, it happens often, they tend to like cut down your shifts and things like that. So I realize it's important to just be clear right from the beginning what type of employment you are on and how many number of hours they're gonna give you and on what dates based on your availabilities, and then that would fit their schedule as well. That way it's clear both for your employer as well as you, and it also gives you the flexibility to look for a second job if the hours that they can give you is not enough or it does not make up to the number of hours that you can actually work. Okay, so that's the first thing I would sincerely ask you guys to ask your employers and be clear on. Number 2 on my list, I have actually made a list again. So yeah, another thing is ask your employer what they mean by like morning, afternoon, evening, and overnight shift. Now I know that all these are defined in the Fair Work Obsidian based on different industries, but then again, like, different employers, in order to cut down cost, tend to redefine it for themselves, and that's something that I have learned. It may not be happening rampantly, but because there are so many students looking for a job, like, everybody is trying to take advantage of the situation and, you know, cut down cost. So that's something that I would recommend that you ask your employer, because afternoon, evening, and overnight shifts are paid higher than morning shifts. So usually my understanding, for instance, would be a morning shift would be from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. and after that 3 to 2 p.m. it would go into being an afternoon shift, and I should be paid a higher wage, and that would be your understanding and assumption. However, when you are actually getting paid at the end of the pay period, then you realize that I'm actually paid morning shift wage for my afternoon hours as well. And then you have to go back to your employer, and then they come back to you with, you know, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is morning hours. Now, I don't know all the rules and regulations of different industries, so I don't know how to fight my case. If I had asked it right from the beginning, then it would make more sense for me to just do a morning shift with them and do an afternoon shift somewhere where it would compensate me better. So in that way, I would really urge you to ask your employer and get clarification on whether their definition of morning shift, afternoon shift, evening shift, and overnight shift hours is the same as what you think it is. So will save you a lot of differences with your employers in the long run. So that's number 2. And number 3 is cancellation of shift hour notice. Now, I think this goes for the benefit of both the employer as well as an employee. What happens is sometimes you would have to cancel the shift that you are rostered for. It could be because of an unavoidable personal circumstances, or you might get sick. Now, if you get sick on the morning of your shift, there is no way you can go to work. But then there might also be certain things that suddenly come up that you cannot avoid. So in this case, make sure to ask your employer before starting work how many hours do they expect you to give notice, so that they can find someone to work as your replacement and agree on it. In most cases, what they do is you are expected to give a certain number of hours as notice period before you cancel your shift, but they don't do the same. Okay, so let's say it's your shift hour, but then because of something or the other, the shift get canceled, right? So you're not notified on time, so which means it might have got let's say canceled overnight when you're sleeping or things like that, and the next morning, if your shift is an early hour shift, you would be at your site to work. So in that case, because they haven't given you enough notice and then you have already reached the site, according to FWO, you are supposed to be compensated, but they don't compensate you, and you haven't really clarified in the beginning, and now you don't have a point to tell them because they would directly get back to you with, but it was updated in Teams app, or it was like changed in your roster, but hey, when I'm sleeping overnight to start my early morning shift, you do not expect me to be looking at my roster changes overnight, right? So in that case, I feel like in order for you to be equally compensated, and also in order for you to be able to give your employer enough notice period when you have to cancel the shift, it is very important to agree right from the beginning, if it is already not defined in the employee agreement, to agree on the number of hours you both are expected to give each other if the shift has to be cancelled. So that's number 3 on my list, because trust me, in one of my jobs, like they kept doing that every morning I would reach the site and they would cancel the shift and I will not be compensated. So things like that happen a lot here. So that's number 3. And number 4 on my list is public holidays and your rostered shift. Now everybody knows that public holidays you get paid double, so everybody just wants to work on public holidays, and it's kind of a sad thing that is happening in Australia, and something that is happening rampantly, but no one really wants to talk about it, but it's happening. Like the shift supervisor would usually give the public holidays to people from their own nationality or community, and if you're not from the same nationality, if you are in their good books, right? It is never about okay, so let's be fair and divide the public holidays amongst everybody and just give fair share of the benefits. No, it does not happen like that. So in this case, I felt that it's important to get it clarified right from the beginning that, let's say if the public holiday falls on my rostered shift, let's say every time my availability is given to the company is from Monday to Friday in the morning, and then the public holidays that they fall, will I be given the shift? Because if you are not going to be given the shift, then will you be compensated with a normal shift of the person who was given the public holiday? Or if, like, let's say there are 2 continuous days of public holidays and it's both on your shift, are you going to be given both the shifts, or another person is going to be given one of your shifts, but are you going to be again compensated with another normal hour from the other person's shift? These are things that you should ask your employer right from the beginning, so that at the end you are not deprived of all the benefits that you are supposed to be given and you should be getting. Okay, and yeah, it just becomes such a sad thing over the course of time, because you think that it's your rostered shift and you haven't given your availability somewhere else, but then they also tend to cut down your shift and you're not working somewhere else, and then you are losing a lot in your time and then the number of hours that you could actually work. So in order to save yourself this, I would highly suggest that you get it clarified with your company how public holiday hours work within the company. And also I think for some companies they pay you differently. Like for instance, for the first public holidays you get a little higher, and then if there's too many public holidays, then I think it comes down a little. Things like that, there are different rules, so it's important to just ask your employer and get it clarified. So that was number 4 that I would recommend, that you ask your employer before starting your job. And then final on my list, and the number 5, is the end of service notice period. Now, at one point of time, it's going to happen, whether it is you leaving the job for something better, or it's your employer deciding that your service is no longer required. It's going to happen. So in this case, in most cases, the end of notice period is outlined based on what's written in the Fair Work Obsidian clauses. However, what I have learned is to be very clear with your employer again on whether it is number of working days or number of days. For instance, let's say if you have been working with the company for less than a year, you are supposed to give 1 week notice period before leaving the company, right? Now this 1 week notice period is 7 days. Does this 7 day means 7 working days, which means Sundays and Saturdays are not included? Or is it just 7 days, so it's just like Monday to Sunday you can give as notice period? And it's the same that you can ask your employer if they're going to be giving you 1 week notice period. Are they considering Saturday and Sunday or not? It is important. And also, if you are not able to give the notice period, or your company is not able to give you the notice period, then what? Is your company going to compensate you for the notice period? Or would you have to pay the company for not being able to give the notice period? Because if you have to pay the company, then how is this going to be calculated? So it's very important, because when you have to, if you have to pay back and then they don't consider it as 7 weeks, and if they consider it as a normal working hours, then are you going to be paying for 7 days, or are you going to be paying for 5 days? So all these calculations and how it's going to be calculated, it's very important to get it sorted right in the beginning, because trust me, when you're leaving the job, the company is trying to save cost by not paying you enough benefits, and you are trying to get the most out of the company in terms of your benefits. And then you both become very defensive, and you try to push your points across, and it does not end well. So in this way, it's very important to just get it sorted right from the beginning itself. I have learned and realized. So yeah, these are 5 things that I personally wished I had asked my first employer in Australia, to save myself a lot of the discussions and differences that I have had to go through. And I wanted to share it so that you could learn from my mistakes and from my learnings, and not repeat the same, because I sincerely believe that it is always good to part ways, whether with an employer or in a romantic relationship or in a friendship, on a good terms, right? And I have never believed in burning bridges, because you never know when you would have to walk back on that bridge. So in that way, I personally feel that this would help a lot for you. And yeah, I hope you find it helpful. Thank you. Bye. Oh yeah. Just